Now understand, the sports car market went up 200%. So we're only halfway back to pre-pandemic levels. Can the sports card market go down another 84%? That's what one tuber claims based on his data. So we're going to look at what he's done, and we're going to look at the statistical model that he's used to prove whether or not will the sports card market go down another 84%, or are we looking at what another YouTuber said, a bull market? If you want to know the answer to those questions, stick around, hit the subscribe button. We here at EDI Sports Cards cover sports and sports cards for you. Welcome back to EDI Sports Cards. So here we go. This is what we're going to do. I want you to go and subscribe to this YouTuber's channel. He only has 300 subscribers right now, and so I want you to go subscribe to him. It's called Chasing Majors, and you can go watch this video. It is really good. Now, I'm going to say we're going to look at the statistical model that he uses, and he's actually trying to do a beta price guide. The model is flawed. It does not follow statistical reasoning. So we're going to go over that and how he can actually improve this model. Now, I would love to work with him, but unfortunately, if he's trying to do a beta version of a price guide, I don't think he wants to work with me because I think he's probably trying to make some money off of it. And whenever money gets involved, people don't like to work with someone else. If he does, if he's interested in actually making a good price guide, I welcome him to reach out to me at Instagram, EDI Sports Cards, and let's have a conversation. I would love to use this data to show you how much your cards are actually worth, and he is on the right track. I want to make that very clear. Even though this model is flawed, he's on the right track. So you need to pay attention. All right, let's go to the first thing that Chasing Majors did, which is on the right track. This is the card market that he has basically figured out, which is that you need to have a group of cards that you analyze. And so what he has done is he has taken 220 cards from across the different sports and decades and basically put them into a model. He uses 3 of the most popular sold grading. So that either would be for each particular card. So that could be a PSA 7, 8, 9. That could be a PSA 4, 5, 6. Depends on what the most popular sales numbers are for each card. Again, that's a good idea, and that's on the right track. There's a flaw in this model. Like I said, we're going to go over that in a little bit. But so far, he's on the right track. So here's what the data actually says. So let's take a look at this. Now, remember, the source for this information, and I want all YouTubers to start understanding that if you want to have journalistic integrity, you need to put in the bottom of the screen, you need to put source. So this is where the source of this information comes from. This is not from me. This is from Chasing Majors, which is important. He deserves the credit for this information. So this is what it says. Based on the 660 cards with the grades. Now, how did we get to 660? Remember, he does 220 cards times 3 because it's 3 grade levels. So PSA 4, 5, 6, PSA 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, depending on what card it was. So he has 3 times as many sales numbers than if he just did 1 grade, which is, again, a smart idea and on the right track. He determined that a year-over-year average return should be about 9%. Again, this model is flawed, so that number is not real, but it's a good starting point. So if your card should go up about 9% every single year, then what he saw is that from 2017 to 2018, the card market had a 1% decline. From 18 to 19, there was a 2% increase. And then from 19 to 20, a 59% increase. Remember, that was at the beginning of the pandemic. And then from 20 to 21, we saw a huge bubble, 183% increase. Then in 2022, we saw a pullback, and then in 2023, we saw another pullback of around 20%. So between 17 and 18, according to his data, according to Chasing Major data, there was a 1% decline in the market. Then between 18 and 19, there was a 2% increase in the market. Then we see a pullback in 2022 of about 80%, which everyone has felt. That's been a major pullback. We're not back to pre-pandemic levels. So in 2023, we have another 20% decline. And what he's saying, based on his data, again, it's flawed, but based on his data, and he's on the right track, which is the reason why I'm showing this data, because he's actually on the right track. I would love to work with him to fix this model, because this could be a real game changer for the hobby. And if you are following a 9% year-over-year return, which is what he's saying is the average, I don't think that's accurate, which is why we don't know. So he thinks his data is accurate. The problem is that he has some flaw in the model. We got to fix the model, and then we'll actually have real data. But he's on the right track, so I want to make that clear. Chasing Majors is doing a great job. So when we go to the second piece, so what he's done is really analyze the whole market. And so part of why you see these ups and downs is basically because of volume of sales. Now, we all know how capitalism works. We all know how the sports card market works. If there's more demand, the prices go up. If there's less demand, the prices go down. That makes perfect sense. Everybody gets that. So what you really need to know is, well, is there demand today or not? Now, we know that there are more eyeballs on the industry. We know that more people are talking about and interested in sports cards. We know that, just even based on YouTube data. Like, I have almost 1,500 subscribers. The top YouTubers have around 250,000 subscribers. I mean, we're talking about large numbers, where literally only a few years ago, my channel would have been the biggest channel on YouTube. Like, the biggest YouTubers had around 5,000 subscribers. So I would have been one of the influencers only back in 2018, 2019. But now that we're through the pandemic and a lot of eyeballs are on sports cards, that's why these sports card YouTubers can grow. But there's a difference between eyeballs and sales. And there's a difference between attention and demand. And that's what Chasing Majors has kind of looked at. And this data is accurate. This is an accurate chart. And I want to give credit to Chasing Major for finally putting this out, because this is key. So in 2017-18, which is when he started doing the analysis, he saw that the market was down 28%. Okay? Now that's key. That's why when we look at the other chart, that's why the market was down 1% in 2018, because there was a 28% decrease in the number of sales. Demand was down. Now, starting from 2018 through 2019, so 2019 is when the pandemic starts, and we see a 44% increase in sales volume. Again, not just eyeballs, but actual dollars into people's pockets. So the demand went up, the prices went up, and everybody was getting rich, and everyone was getting excited. Like, oh my God, you could sell sports cards. All right, now we get to 2021, and we see that there's a 12% increase, right? Okay, now you get to 2022, and you see a 1% increase. Now you get to 2023, and it's a 49% decline, okay? Now, what we're looking at now is he's predicting that there's got to be more decline. That's what he's predicting. There must be more decline because the prices are still too high. This is true. You have less demand today. So if you're trying to buy sports cards to figure out, well, can I sell them on the back end? You need to understand that there is basically about 50% less sales today than there were back in 2017. And what he's actually showing is that there's more room just to get back to pre-pandemic levels. Now, you can't really predict demand. That's a little bit more difficult because there's a lot of factors that go into demand. But one of the things that is a problem is that prices are too high. And therefore, that's one of the reasons why people are not buying cards. Because one, demand is down. So why would you buy a card for $1,000 if you know you can't sell it for $1,000 or $1,100 or $1,200? Like, no one's there. There are no buyers. There's 50% less sales now. So if you don't have a buyer for your card, why would you put out that much money? And if you are buying really expensive cards, you should probably take that in consideration. Now, if you're collecting and you don't care, you don't need the money, again, what you're doing, you have to understand your sports card is, like this sports card, it's a piece of cardboard. Does it have value? Sort of. There's intrinsic value, like it's worth it's worth relatively what you paid for it. So this is just a normal rookie card. What is it worth? It's worth maybe $1, $2. Is that what I paid for it? No, I actually got it in a deal. So I got it as part of a whole other deal. So to me, this card was free. So I'm okay with that. Will I hold on to it? If I like it, I'll hold on to it. If I don't like it, I'll get rid of it. Now, how? Either I'll put it in a bulk deal or I'll sell it, for 50 cents or $1. I'll try to make some money on it, but who knows if I will. That's the point, is that you need to understand that there's 50% less buyers today than there were a couple years ago. There's not as many people buying your cards. So let's go to the third chart because he actually does a really good analysis of Ken Griffey Jr.'s 1989 Upper Deck rookie card. The card that basically made me into a sports card dealer because this card put me through college. As he shows, this is the stats, and these are accurate stats. That's the other thing. This is all accurate. So his model is flawed, but his stats are accurate. So here we go. So in 2017, 572 of Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 9s were sold. In 2018, 482. In 2019, 577. So you see there was a slight decline in 18, but then an increase back in 19. In 2020, 1,120 PSA 9 Ken Griffey Jr. rookie cards were sold. Now that's what you need to know. Okay, so if you want to understand why prices were going up and everything, because the demand was there. We literally doubled the demand. So 577 PSA 9s were sold in 2019, 1,120 in 2020. In 2021, still strong demand, 991 sales. And then it falls off a cliff. In 2022, there was only 272 of these cards sold, and so far in 2023, only 197. So if you're holding on to a PSA 9, Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, there's no buyers. There are no buyers. That's what you need to understand. So if you want to sell this card, now here we're going to look at what the average sales prices are. We're going to look at this. So he says that the card should be worth around $100. He says the average price so far of the 197 sales is $199.50. So he's saying that there's a gap of $99 on that average price to what it should be worth. Now, I think, just personally, I think that number's not accurate. Like, obviously, the average sale price is accurate. It is sold for $199. I think that is a little high, but what is the actual number? I think that we need to also understand, and we'll get to the statistical model in just one second, but what we need to understand is there needs to be a range, and there also needs to be what I talk about in 2 seconds. So we'll get there. I just don't think that the card is worth $199. I don't know what it actually is worth. I think it'll be a little bit less, but I don't believe that it's worth what Chasing Majors thinks it's worth, which is $100 based on his statistical model. I don't think so. So I think there's actually a room for some growth there. I think it's worth more than $100, but I think it's worth less than $199. So let's go to the statistical model. And I actually put this out so that we can do some nice work, right? So we're going to do some teaching here. So the first thing that I want you to take a look at is, so there needs to be margin of error, okay? What does margin of error mean? And to explain when you have a statistical model is that nothing is 100% accurate. Nothing is 100%. So what you have to understand is, what is your margin of error? So he's saying that the Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 9 is worth $100. Okay, well, what's the margin of error? See, that's the problem. That's the first problem with his model is, well, what's the margin of error? Are you off 3 or 4%? I don't know what your statistical model's margin of error is, which is what he needs to tell us so that we know, well, it's worth 100 or so based on the margin of error. That it could be worth more, closer to 110, or it could go down, to maybe 95. So that's why there's a range. When you look at these things, you have to have a range, and there's going to be a top end of the range, and there's going to be a low end of the range. That you need in a sports card market, so that when you buy a card, am I paying a premium, which is the top end of the range, or am I in the middle, or am I at the bottom? Because if you're a collector, you have to make that determination. Do I really want this card? Therefore, I'm going to pay the top end, maybe even pay a premium. That's fine. That's your choice. Or do I want to pay fair, which is the middle of the range? Because paying in the middle is fair. If you pay lowball, that's only if somebody wants to sell it for a lowball. But fair is fair. So if you know what the bottom is, you know what the top is, then if you meet in the middle, that's fair. And that's what's missing right now, because people try to do eBay comps, but they don't. They look for the lowest sale they can find and go, well, that's what it's worth because it's sold for that. That's not how markets work. That's the low end. Then you have the top end, and then you got to meet in the middle. That's a fair price. It sold for $300. It also sold for $100. Well, then $200 is a fair market value. That's how comps work. None of you know how to do that, so here I'm telling you. Now let's go to the second thing that's wrong with his model. So what he tried to do was tried to make an index of cards. And that was a really good idea. He even talks about, and I'm going to put the link to his video because I want you to watch it, because he talks about the FANG stocks. Now, he was right but wrong. And here's what I mean. Instead of using the FANG stocks as his model, he should have used the S&P 100. And the reason is because if you had 100 sports cards that you could statistically study through time, then you actually have an index. And once you have an index, now you can do statistical modeling. He does not have an index. He picked 220 cards randomly. That's a problem. We're going to get to the third reason, and that's because there's no criteria for indexing. Why did he pick each of those 220 cards? First of all, 220 cards is way too many. It's way too many. You needed to start with 100. You could then expand to a 200 or a 500. Again, there's an S&P 500. There's a 100 index. I think that the card market needs a 100 index. The 100 cards that you can then base everything off of and go, okay, this is what the card market is actually doing. And if we're trying to move into the modern era where sports cards is a real type of asset, right now it is not an asset. I know that a lot of the sports card influencers were going to try to argue the other way, but I did a whole playlist of how you can't invest in sports cards. And the reason is because there's no market. These are not assets. Like, these cards are not assets. They're not. You cannot use them. You cannot use them as collateral. You can't. They're not assets. They could become assets if we start using our brains and doing this in a much smarter way. Now, I would love to work with Chasing Majors. I don't know if he would be open to that because I would like to be able to do that. But if anybody out there knows how to do data as well as he does and knows how to pull the information, or if there's an app developer out there, this is a billion-dollar idea. I already know who needs this information. I already know exactly, and I've got some contacts that could do licensing and all these different things. This is a billion-dollar idea for anybody that wants to work with me. It's open. I'm letting you know this is where the market needs to go. So yes, Fanatics would want this information. eBay would want this information. Every single other sports card company. So, Zion Cases would want this. Like, anybody that wants to know about the sports card market would want to know this information. So anybody that's out there that's looking for a billion-dollar idea, reach out to me on Instagram, EDI Sports Cards. You can find me, you can talk to me, and let's start making this hobby maybe profitable for you and for your family, because you can buy and sell cards, but this is not an investment right now because there's just too much volatility and you don't have the data you need to make smart investing decisions. You don't have the data. I understand that there's apps out there that tell you what cards are worth. They are wrong. All of them are wrong. Market Mover's app is wrong. It's not accurate. All it does is track sales. It doesn't tell you what the market is. It just tracks sales. It's not telling you the market. It's not a market analyzer. It is literally just a market sales registry. And if you want to know what the sales of different cards are, that's great. But I just went to a card shop the other day and the guy literally didn't know how to price cards. It's fine. Like, you're running your shop, you do it the way you want to do it. I'm just a customer. If you want to give me like a certain number, that's fine. Give me a certain number. But if you don't know what you're doing, I'm going to know you don't know what you're doing. And I just was like, all right. And I walked away. I bought, a couple low-end cards, but I walked away because I didn't need to be involved in a deal where the person doesn't know what they're doing, which is the problem. You're going to sports card shows, you're going to sports shops, and people are telling you your card's worth X, your card's worth this, I'll give you this, and you're like, well, it doesn't sound good. Well, it doesn't matter what it sounds good. Like, what is your card actually worth? And here's what I'm going to offer you. Now, again, I don't know what a sports card shop, like an actual store, I don't know what their margins are because they need to know their margins. So if a card is going at the top range at 200 and at the bottom range at 100, what are you offering people for their cards? Are you offering lower than the bottom range? Because you're like, well, I'm only going to sell at the bottom range? Then you might have trouble getting inventory. And that's where the demand comes in. And that's what you all as investors or people who collect cards, you need to know the demand. Because if there's no demand for your card, you have to take whatever the market will give you. If there's a high demand, then you don't have to take the low ball offer. You can take the higher end. You can say, well, no, it goes for 200 and I want something off of the 200 price. I want 175 or 160 or 150. I'm not going to take 100 for that card because there's a lot of demand. But if you don't know, what are you going to do? So you could be selling cards for a lot less than they're worth to you, or you could be selling, or you could be buying cards at prices that are so much higher than the actual market. And that's why a lot of you are losing money. Now, I did a video way back where it talked about the sports card investor lost $1 million. Literally $1 million in sports card value. And that wasn't very difficult because he paid at the top of the market. And as you saw from the data, we're down about 90% off of the top. Now understand, the sports card market went up 200%. So we're only halfway back to pre-pandemic levels. And that's what you need to understand. We're only halfway down from pre-pandemic levels. So the question is, should the sports card market go down? Yes, but how much more should it go down? And that's the question that none of us actually know. So there is not going to be a bull rally. There is not going to be a sports card spike. We are in a sports card downturn. The question is, how far do we have to go? Stay tuned. We'll talk about it in our next video. I thank you for joining EDI Sports Cards. I'll see you in the next video.